Hey, I'm Josh from Vacuums R Us and Sewing 2 in Colorado, and today we're going to be doing a motor replacement on a Sebo X7. Specifically, this is a Sebo X7 PET. The customer's ultra helpful description of the issue at hand was, I paid a lot of money for this and it's not working right. I want it fixed. On further examination, we found that the customer had vacuumed so much water that their filters, bags, and motor were stained. Don't vacuum water, kids. So the machine itself, the motor didn't fail from any factory defect. It was simply someone vacuuming tremendous quantities of water, which is not covered under warranty, so don't do that. We're gonna do the motor replacement. This is probably the most complex, difficult, involved repair that you can do on a Sebo X7. You have to get all the way in to get the motor out. This video is intended for authorized service centers. This is not intended for home users. If you do want to try this crazy repair at home, be sure to watch the entire video first and remain confident that you're able to complete the repair without assistance. If you start the repair and then bring it in pieces to a local repair shop, they will most likely not accept your repair. We certainly will not. So let's get into it. So step one, we're going to separate the upper and lower housing. There's a gray button right here, which you depress, and then you pull the housing up. Sometimes they're kind of stuck. If you put the machine on the floor and put your foot on the head, you can kind of pull up the housing while you bend over and push the button. I'm going to remove the brush roller first. So the brush roller right here is going to release the side cap, and then the brush roller will wiggle out. And then we're going to flip the machine over, and we're going to take out some screws. I've got 1, 2, 3 screws that we're going to pull out. These are all simple Phillips. We're going to flip the machine over, and we're going to watch to make sure we don't lose those screws. We're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the housing. So, I'm going to remove the back filter plate. The filter's already been removed. We already disposed of it because it was saturated. So there are clips on the front, so the head's going to come up like this. And there is this button right here, which is your brush roller release. We're going to take that out and we're going to set it aside because that's kind of a loose part, as it were. So we're going to rip a whole bunch of stuff out of here, right? Over here, we have this loose piece right here. It's not fastened in. It's held in when the head is kind of clamped in. This suspension bar right here is held in by the piece we just removed. There's a spring on it right there, which will become loose and can fall off, so don't lose that. And we'll show you how to put that back in. At this point, we have access to the belt right here, which is on the motor. We're gonna just kind of roll this and slide the belt off so it's out of the way. And next we're gonna remove the PCB. These are kind of sharper Phillips heads, so we're gonna pull these out. There are 3 Phillips heads right here. And you'll remember these because they are relatively short and they're significantly smaller than the other screws. So we have a small cable right here that we're going to need to pull out. You always want to avoid pulling on the wire because you can potentially pull it out of that connector entirely. The best way to do it is to use a razor blade, or maybe a pick, or a small flathead to kind of loosen that and pop it out. So that's out of the way. There are 2 wires on the bottom here. These 2 wires right here, the hot wires, we're going to need to remove these because these are what feed to the motor and will be disconnected. So for these, I'll put a Phillips head under here and I kind of twist a little bit to get those to pop out. And once they're loose, they usually come up pretty easily. All right, and so I'm going to let the PCB kind of hang there. There's a retainer thing right here, and what this does is it holds the wiring down in there to keep it out of the way. I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. And now I need to get these wires. They go into a clip over here. They are in a channel along here. I'm going to pull them out of that channel and free them up a little bit. Bring my PCB back here carefully. All right, now we're going to change to Torx. I will link below, both for the motor, but I'm also going to link we sell a set of Torx bits which cover every single bit you can find in a vacuum cleaner that use Torx or security. They're actually security bits too, so all those weird Dyson and Shark screws are included in that kit too. I'll link to it below. And we're using a T20 is what these are going to be. So I got one right here. I got one over here, kind of hidden. All right, so I got two T20s, and now this black shroud is going to come out of my way. It's going to reveal another T20 over here, which we will remove. All right, and I've got two up here. And then I have one back here towards the rear of the machine. All right, and I believe that's it. The motor should come up like this. Generally speaking, they're gonna kind of stick. So you gotta wiggle pretty good to get all this to come out. There we go. So this time I was able to pull the motor out without pulling any of this out. That's not usually the case, honestly. Usually this gasket is stuck to this and you have to pull this whole assembly out too. So I'm going to set the housing aside for a moment and we'll look at installing the new motor inside of this. So weird thing, on most of the X7s I've worked on, and again I've been into this machine already, on most of the X7s I've worked on, they install the motor inside the motor housing without this gear on it. It's just the motor shaft. And this hole right here is too small for the gear to fit through. So they install the motor, the shaft comes out, and then they press this gear onto the shaft. And so you can't actually get the motor out of the housing unless you then remove that gear. And what's weird is when you buy the new motor has the gear pressed on it, as it should, because most of us don't have bearing presses or bearing pullers to deal with this. But in order to remove your motor, you need to take a utility knife and shave around, just very carefully, take off as little as you possibly can. But you need to shave around this pulley, taking off just a tiny slice of plastic in order to get this pulley to go through there and to get this large enough for the pulley to go through. Another thing is typically there's a gasket on here too, and typically it's really pressed in there and you have to tap the motor right here with a hammer to get it to pop out. That's super common. We're going to remove this right here. It applies pressure to that gasket, and that's a very small, simple Phillips head right there. I think that's different than any of the other screws we've used, and this will kind of just pop out. And this has a gasket underneath it as well. There we go, and that'll pop out. This spring thing applies pressure to the motor mount, rubber motor mount in there. Okay, so now, normally, I've already been in here. Normally it's stuck, and you have to hammer right here to get it out. I'm gonna pull this gasket out. So fortunately the motor's dead, so that won't hurt anything. And so there we have our defective motor. Now, if we look at this motor briefly, you can see residue on the motor from all of the water that was sucked into the motor, and then it was so much liquid that it sat in that liquid and started to corrode and rust. Ugh, you hear it. Ooh, sounds terrible. Okay. All right, so we have our new Sebo motor here. I will link to this below. We will also link to the parts diagram for this machine, which can be helpful if you're trying to figure some stuff out, or if you feel like if you need some other parts, the parts diagram is super helpful as well. Okay, so it comes with this new gasket, or motor mount rather, pre-installed. If you look down inside of this, you will see that there's only one way to put this in, because this gasket is motor mount is uneven. So you've only got one way to put the motor in. You can't screw this up. Okay, so we're gonna set the motor in. We're gonna kind of just kind of guide our wires up the side right there. And then we need to wiggle it around. We can kind of use the motor gear as a guide, because if we're getting it through there, then our motor mount must be lined up pretty well. And then boop, popped right through. So we're good there. Now I'm gonna put this kind of retainer in so that it doesn't move around so much. Again, one small Phillips head is what goes in there. Okay, great. So we're gonna flip it over. We're gonna We're gonna bring our wires through here. You'll see that there are 3 markings here for wires. That's because on their commercial product line, the machines are grounded. So there's a green ground wire that will also feed through there, and they have the same mold for their commercial internal components as their other components. And this gasket will go back in. There's little grooves in the gasket to feed the wires through as well over here, so everything matches up prettily. Set that in there, make sure we're sealed real good. So with some luck, we should be able to drop our motor back in here. Okay, and it's set in perfectly. We shouldn't be forcing anything. Shouldn't need to be applying much pressure. Things really just drop into place. These are really precise machines. We're gonna wiggle stuff around, generally speaking, to get it kind of set in the right place, but we're not gonna be forcing anything or really applying much pressure. So 3 screws, 1, 2, 3, and those are the 3 critical screws to get the motor out. These screws over here that I removed, it turned out I didn't need to. Chances are you probably will need to, because yours will probably be stuck and you'll have to pop out this section. All right, and then we have the 1 screw right over here that we need to put on before we put the shroud on. All right, so we got that in there. And then we have this shroud. Going to verify that I've got free movement here. So we have these motor wires for our new motor, and the black is going to go over here. The white is going to go over here. One thing I forgot to mention, when you first take the lid off, it's not a bad idea to take a picture. You can always come back and, you know, pause the video and stuff like that to, you know, if you forgot where something goes. But if you take a quick picture, that'll likely save you some trouble in the future. So we are gonna set these, we're gonna tuck these wires. You can see I still have a bend on this wire right here. And that's where it naturally, it was pushed in there before. So we're gonna add that wire down in there as well. And then we're gonna put that back. There's a hook right here that these 2 power intake wires go under. And then over on the side, we'll remember we have this wire guide that we wanna clip our wires back into as well. Control wire goes under. So this ribbon cable to the height adjustment motor is kind of oddly placed. It's difficult to get these wires down here without applying undue pressure on that. You want to be careful. You also want to be careful over here of your sensor. It's pretty delicate. So when you get this stuff set in here, and you'll feel it when you drop in, or everything's in the right place, it'll just drop in. All right, so remember we had those sharp Phillips heads, small sharp little Phillips heads that went in there. So we have this control cable that plugged in over here. There's only one direction you can plug this in, and it's gonna lay pretty obviously in the direction it goes in regardless. And then I'll tuck that up into the cable guide up there. Okay, so now we're gonna take this belt and we're gonna kind of roll it. We're gonna turn the motor and it'll roll right onto that motor shaft right there. So next we're gonna put this back in. So in case your spring falls out, I'm going to show you how to get it back in again, right? So there's a hook, there's 2 hooks. The small hook will go over here, and the small hook is going to go inside of that. So the big spring will go around, the small hook will go inside there. And then this large hook, there's a notch right on this side. There's a notch that this large hook is going to go inside of. And then the large metal peg is going to go inside of a hole right there. See how it stands back up again? That's what we're looking for. So we'll hold it like that, and then this guide is going to go in there, and it's going to hold this from popping out as well as protect the belt. And that will just sit in there just like that. So finally, we have the brush roller. So this gray piece will fit inside of here. So we're gonna put the lid back on. When putting the lid back on, this is gonna guide through this hole right here. And then we're gonna kind of move forward a little bit. There are hooks right here. These 2 large hooks on the front that are gonna hook in right there. So similar to how we took it off, we're going the opposite, where we hook in the front first, and then we're just gonna sort of wiggle until we feel that housing kind of clamp shut there. And we may have small gaps over here, very small gaps. Right there, we can see there's a small gap that's going to be sealed up when we put those 3 screws in. But remember, it's only held together with 3 screws, so, or bolts rather. So there shouldn't be any large gaps. If there are, you're doing something wrong. We have a new filter for the machine. We're gonna test fire the machine real quick. Fantastic. So it's not unusual when you've burnt a motor out, like actually burnt it out like this one did, that there'll be some residual odor that permeates the motor bucket. You know, we've replaced the filters. It's absolutely important to replace the filters because it smells like, well, it's musty too. That residual odor will go away eventually, but if you're dealing with customers, it's worth mentioning to them that they may smell a little bit of an odor for a little while, just because that kind of soot works its way into the plastic. Other than that, we are good to go. I'm going to link all the parts below, as well as this and any other videos related to the X7. Hopefully this was helpful.